And so being not extended was not the same as being kicked out of Bethel. If you weren't extended, it's because you couldn't make the cut. Didn't measure up to their standards. They're incredibly, unapologetically lofty standards. The dwelling manual states clearly what is expected of you. You are supposed to read it within the first few days of being at Bethel and get in line. They don't want to hear your mouth. It's written in the dwelling manual. We don't want to hear your suggestions. We like it the way it is. Period. Written. So, shut up, fall in line. Get a little more responsibility and seniority before you start making suggestions or complaining. During one of the new member lectures, I vividly remember our brother stating, if they ask you, if the branch asks you to dig that pit, you dig that pit. If the branch asks you to jump, you ask how high. That is what was expected of us, and that is what we did. Until we, you know, gained a little more responsibility. The revolving door of Bethel, it never stops moving. People come in and out of that thing all the time. And a lot of guys would self destruct within the first 6 months to a year because they just couldn't take the mental anguish of it. Being away from home, and if you were in New York City for the first time or in a big city for the first time in your life without your family, that was an added stress. And then on top of that, having to prove yourself to literally everybody, your table head, the person who ran the table that you would go and you were assigned to at morning worship every day, was checking to make sure you were at morning worship. Your home overseer, the person who was basically your landlord, would send the housekeepers to your room to make sure that your room was clean. There was not a crumb, there was not a speck, there was not a dish, there was not a nothing left undone. You knew the expectations of how to keep your room clean because you were literally scrubbing as your very first training. You would scrub the bathrooms of the governing body members and clean their rooms when you first got there, at least in Brooklyn. And so you knew the standard of cleanliness. If anything was off, you were getting a call during your job, and they would be telling you, you need to go home, clean whatever we told you to clean, and go back to work. And they would do that as a test. You were always being tested, especially your first year. 3, 6, 1 year, you were being tested. And this is how they would reward you after you finished vetting. You would get a call, you would go up to the office. After your 6 months was up, you would sign your 1 year Bethel assignment. And then that meant you kind of made it. You would go upstairs, you would sign your Religious Order of Jehovah's Witness paperwork stating that you are now a member of the Religious Order of Jehovah's Witnesses, and you would sign your vow of poverty, which meant that you could not work secularly, period, and you had to rely on Bethel to provide for the majority of your needs. If you were to work secularly, you would have to then give the money that you were paid from your secular income back to Bethel. I knew people in treasury, ain't nobody ever did that. But that was the law, and that was the rule. If you wanted to work secularly, as many of us did, as I've mentioned before in other previous posts, not in this series, you would have to take a half day of vacation. You could work as many hours as you wanted to secularly, and you keep that money. And that was that. You would receive $130 a month to care for any needs that were not met by Bethel. You would get your gas reimbursed for any spiritual activity, but you were encouraged to carpool with other Bethelites in your assigned territory, in your assignments. And so that is how you were set up. If you made it, congratulations. You're a Bethelite. Now, the next thing is the disgrace. So, the disgrace of being at Bethel was palatable. Immediately, first of all, you go to Bethel and you already think you're not worthy. Because as a witness, you already think you're not worthy. Undeserved kindness, everything you're given is undeserved. You didn't work for anything. You did what you ought to have done, and that was your MO. And if you think that's how it is as a witness, go to Bethel as a worker. You feel like that immediately. You feel negative. You feel less than a person while you're there, and they will make sure that you feel that way every single day during morning worship at 7 fucking m. People would get up there during comments, and then you could just see everybody is just droned out. We don't want to sit here and talk about whatever this daily text is about. And here's the thing about Bethel. Bethel is obsessed because they have a bunch of young boys there. They are obsessed with making sure that you don't watch the pornography. I don't know what TikTok's rules are, so I'm just gonna call it that, and you already know what I'm talking about. We're talking about 18 plus MA material that you should not be watching as a Christian. So, the thing about it is, during the time that I was there, smartphones weren't really a thing. Not everybody had them, so it was easy not to watch it. Um, if you did, you had to kind of seek it out, and then the computers at Bethel were locked down. If you wanted to go to a brewery, you couldn't even get on the website to see the menu because you had to be 21 plus. And if you went to that website multiple times and you kept getting denials, you're going to get a call from your oversight the next Monday morning as to why you kept trying to get on a 21 plus site. And you have to say, well, I was trying to go to a brewery with the boys, but the site was 21 plus and I couldn't get in, so I couldn't go. Or we couldn't get into the website. So that's why it kept alerting. So they're watching you like a hawk. Again, smartphones were not a thing, but people still were getting into the pornography. A lot of people would get on, watch it while they were on vacation or something, or maybe one of the stations that we had basic cable at Bethel, so one of the stations maybe didn't get censored and something came through, and then you got a slew of brothers that you got to talk to the next week. Bethel talks about the pornography every single morning worship if they can. It doesn't even matter if the morning worship is not about the pornography. They're going to talk about the pornography, and it's very annoying. Even if you are having a problem with the pornography while at Bethel, you get tired of talking about it, damn it. And when you first get to Bethel, they immediately talk to you about that. Now, when I was there, they didn't have the Pillowgate video when I was there the first time. But they did separate the boys from the girls, and they took the boys in the room, and they said, listen, get a hold of yourself. Try not to touch yourself so much. Definitely don't watch pornography. If you do, your ass is out, especially your first year. So we were terrified to not watch it. We were terrified of what could happen if we did watch it. But there are guys who did it within their first year, and you didn't have any clout or anybody really on your side to vouch for you to get a second, third chance. You were gone. And I knew a good number of guys that left because they watched the pornography within their first year, and it was sad because some of them, just came out and said that I watched it, I shouldn't have done it, blah blah blah, whatever. And so then they get sent home. Again, not necessarily kicked out, but they get sent home, told, the elders are told at home, just help him with this and he can reapply in a year. And actually, some guys did come back in a year. If you were a good worker, Bethel will do a lot of things for you. So that's one of the things they do. The kind of that really does kind of shame you while you're there. And unfortunately, pornography was so prevalent that it just became more and more of an issue. They had to start bending some rules.